Okay, good afternoon, Buffalo State College, Buffalo and surrounding suburbs. Today is Monday, February 8th, 2016. The time's going at 1:07, and you're listening to Vantage Point, the weekly 1 to 2:30 p.m. show on 91.3 FM WBNY, dedicated to social and environmental justice issues affecting the people of Western New York, really not covered by the mainstream media. I'm Jack Knack, the weather medic, the Dr. Weather. I'm joined today in Studio A by my co-host, WBNY Public Affairs Director, All Talk Monday Coordinator Jessica Kosick. I haven't seen you in like 2 months.
It's been a while. You
Jeez.
can add assistant to underwriting director to that list now too.
Assistant underwriting. Well, that's why we got some underwriting on now. And beautiful job on the underwriting with the technology department. Buffalo State College. Very upbeat.
That was actually my first underwriting card that I've ever done.
That was just excellent. It was excellent. Well, I was going to ask you real quick, anything important happened over the break? Like any Santa Claus give you anything important? Or
I got to binge watch Bones. 212 episodes.
Jeez. Jeez. I only got 2 lumps of coal because I was good this year.
This was the first.
I normally get 1. I got 2.
This was the first break since I went back to school a couple of years ago that I've actually wanted to take a break.
Well, you deserve a break. You took 21 credit hours last semester, correct?
Yeah, it knocked me on my butt.
Yeah. How many this semester?
12. I'm supposed to add an internship, but I'm running into liability problems.
Okay, might be a show. Okay. Well, speaking of today's show, right here we're going to talk all about endocrine disruptors, and endocrine is another name for like hormone disruptors. And our first guest, well, we have 2 guests in studio. The first one, Nellie J. Brown. She's the director of workplace health and safety programs for Cornell's University of School and Industrial and Labor Relations, a certified industrial hygienist, biologist, and chemist. Nellie earned a master's degree right here from Buffalo State College. I won't tell you which year, but she earned one. Ms. Brown is the lead training manager for Cornell's U.S. EPA certified lead programs. And she's worked with failure analysis for anaerobic digesters, used to produce biogas from dairy manure, and developing the content for workplace tasks and exposures for chemicals currently believed to cause breast cancer, developing hazard reduction procedures for workers engaged in collecting, that roadkill on the roads, and worked with pathogenic avian influenza with bird flu, and she has a huge resume. She's worked in Amherst with in the wastewater treatment plant in Amherst as a chemist, analyzing the sewage sludge, and she's worked for managing organic residuals on sewage sludge, and she provides industrial hygiene services for the Center of Occupational Environmental Medicine in Western New York, clinic funded by New York State for diagnosis and treatment of occupational injuries and illnesses. She does a lot of on-site training in the matter of occupational safety and health matters, including exposure to chemicals, biological agents, agronomics, occupational stress, shift work, and long hours of work. She does crisis and violence prevention, hazardous analysis techniques, and indoor quality for employers, labor unions, and the public. And she's wrote some publications. So I guess that's enough. I'd just like to give a warm WBNY welcome to Nellie Brown. Go ahead, Nellie. Are you on?
Yes, thank you very much for such a lovely introduction and for inviting me here.
Well, thanks for coming by. We have to tell people what's going on with endocrine disruptors. And I guess I'll get to John Cunningham now, or unless Jessica wants to introduce John.
Well, actually, as I was reading over the same things as you were, you glossed over the fact that she graduated here, but she graduated from multidisciplinary studies, and I just want to ask her what she thought of that program.
Well, because you're in that same program, right?
I will be when I start graduate school.
Okay, go ahead, Nellie.
I found it just suited me perfectly because it let me tailor my research needs to what I felt and saw was needed at work in dealing with occupational injuries and illnesses. And it let me tailor the program to do research in areas there that very little in the way of occupational exposure information had really been gathered. And I generated research papers that later became health hazard manuals that are in use. And they are, in fact, a lot of those became manuals that are on our Cornell Digital Commons. And since they've been listed with the Digital Commons, have had over 100,000 full text downloads. So I found the work I did here was incredibly valuable, and I was very glad to be able to do the program the way that was actually most useful for what people out there in the workplace really needed.
I think a lot of students out there are kind of like stuck between majors, and they don't really understand that the schools out there have an option like Buff State for bachelor's in individualized studies or master's as multidisciplinary studies. And I think that was really cool when I discovered that.
Yes, I found it gave me a chance to bring together a variety of different types of issues into one focus. And so I was able to put together both natural and applied sciences and do a lot of work that was translational. In other words, it allowed published information in the technical literature to be drawn from and used for real practical application in workplaces.
Can I just ask where the common ground between the biologies and the sciences that you study come in with the crisis and violence prevention?
Well, what I do as a certified industrial hygienist and my work for Cornell is that I do both training and field evaluations in all kinds of occupational exposures. And one of the big health and safety issues in American workplaces is workplace violence.
Yes.
Homicide has been either the second or third leading cause of fatality among workers, literally since OSHA's been collecting statistics. So it is a huge problem, and so anything you can do for that type of workplace safety and health and the prevention strategy is extremely important. I would have to say most of my health and safety work has gone into chemicals and biological agents, and more recent years into ergonomics as well. But the violence issue is a huge one.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. And of course, it's very, very important to Jessica because she does vanity violence, which is with domestic issues. Go ahead, tell her what vanity violence is.
Vanity violence is something that I've been working on since I was about finishing my associate's degree, and now I'm finishing my bachelor's, so it's been a little bit. But vanity violence, it started out as just kind of like a performance, and then as I started to wrap my head around nonprofits, then I started moving in towards a nonprofit, and then as I came through domestic violence and then survived and went on with that, it started aiming towards the people that leave the exes but don't, because you leave the ex and you go from being a victim to a survivor, and it becomes less important to the people that are helping with domestic violence. So I started seeing that there was kind of a drop off and less resources and help and support out there for the people after they've already come through it. So I started adapting all of that and coming up with newer ideas, and it came out to not only domestic violence but dating violence and bullying for like middle school age students too.
Well, my work is aimed, of course, at the workplace, and I do just a little bit on resources for domestic violence in my general workplace violence programs. But I have a colleague that I'd be happy to connect you with. She's actually in our New York City Cornell office. Her name is Casey Wagner, and her specialty is domestic violence issues in the workplace. And she does not only training but expert testimony in the area, and you might want to touch base with her. She might be an interesting resource for you.
Definitely. I'll definitely look forward to that.
Okay, thanks Jessica and Nellie. I'm going to introduce our next guest. He's the ex-maintenance supervisor for the Niagara Falls Wastewater Treatment Plant for 15 years. He successfully won the fight with Rita Yella from Food and Water Watch to stop the treatment of fracking waste from being processed at the Niagara Falls Wastewater Treatment Plant. He is also the world's first self-proclaimed sludgeologist. John Cunningham. How you doing, John?
Pretty good, Jack. Thank you very much. I'm basically here to listen to what Ms. Brown has to say and understand more in how endocrine is such a vital building block in our systems, and also just ask a couple of questions that I have that might pertain, that she might be able to answer in my research. So let's get going. Welcome, Mrs. Brown, and hear what she has to say about this, because it's so important to everybody.
I couldn't have said it better myself. The crowd likes it too. Okay, and it's also your show, so your telephone calls are welcome. The number to reach us is 878-5104 in the Buffalo Metro, New York area, or listening to us on the web at wbny.buffalostate.edu, or on the TuneIn app. The number is area code 716-878-5104. I just want to plug one more thing. The WBNY 33 and a third anniversary is Friday, February 19th at 8 p.m. at Mohawk Place. We've been on the air for 33 and a third years, and it's also because the record is 33. The old vinyl spun at 33 and a third times per minute, so it's kind of like a catchy thing. So once again, Friday, February 19th, the WBNY 33 and a third anniversary. Okay, let's get started. We're going to talk here about endocrine disruptors. You want me to start with some background? You want to give us some background, Jessica?
I can give a little background. Endocrine disruptors are chemicals that at certain doses can interfere with the endocrine or hormonal system in mammals. These disruptions can cause cancerous tumors, birth defects, and other developmental disorders. Any system in the body controlled by hormones can be derailed by hormone disruptors. Specifically, endocrine disruptors may be associated with the development of learning disabilities, severe attention deficit disorder, cognitive and brain development problems, immune system effects, deformations of the body, including limbs, breast cancer, prostate cancer, thyroid, and other cancers, sexual developmental problems, such as Feminizing, yes. That's where the males develop female parts. Oh, does it work the opposite way too?
Nellie, does it work the opposite way?
Yes, we can get masculinization of females as well.
Wow, there you go. Isn't that wicked? It's just wicked. It's just wicked.
So when people take and say, "Excuse me, but I was born this way," that might be absolutely true, depending upon what the mother ate during her pregnancy. Is that correct?
Yes, but it even goes beyond that. It looks at changes that might have happened genetically to eggs or sperm. So it could come through the father's exposure or through the mother's exposure, as well as occurring as exposures during pregnancy.
Does it have to be something that people can see? Because, we have a lot of people that come out and at a very young age they were born female but maybe feel male, or born male and feel female. Do you think that this has anything to do with it?
Oh, yes. When you're talking about endocrine disruptors, you're talking about chemicals that can adversely affect all kinds of body processes. So if you look at, for example, some of the issues that have been discovered with the sense of smell, for example, in someone who's gay, they respond favorably to the sense to the fragrance of a person of the same sex. So, things that, turn us on, that sort of thing. All of these items, make us who we are. And yes, we can say, absolutely, we were born that way.
Wow. Well, I was just going to say, besides that, I was just going to finish the little bit here. As the cells begin to grow and differentiate, there are critical balances of the hormones and the protein changes that occur. So that's what you were talking about. So you have a dose of disrupting chemicals may do substantial harm to a developing fetus. The same dose may not significantly affect, though, the adult mother, but it might affect the fetus in the stage of its development. So with the endocrine disruptors, I guess the point you're making is that low doses cannot be ignored. The effects occur at low doses may not occur at high doses, so no dose limit could be set. And when an endocrine disruptor is used, this affects workers, air, soil, water, and occupants. And the exposure to endocrine disruptors can be by inhalation, skin contact, or absorption, and by ingestion. Is there anything, I guess, you could add to that? Because I want to talk about an example of an endocrine disruptor.
Well, the problem with using endocrine disruptors as ingredients in so many products is that people are exposed throughout the entire life cycle of that material. So wherever it was used and however it was used, unless it's actually physically biodegraded or broken down, it's going to end up being somewhere on Spaceship Earth. So that's why I think it's so important to understand what these sources are and how we can influence what sorts of materials actually go into the products that we buy, not through just purchasing, but also through our own, of course, power of the purse and our own activism in steering what goes into them at the manufacturing end. For us as humans, it's you have to kind of look at how you are exposed to this material. It might be something that's put out into the air, or the product that you use might be one that's sprayed. It could be something in a product that you apply to your skin, might even be absorbed through your skin. And it might be materials that end up in the water that we use for processing our food, as well as in our drinking water directly. But it can also be materials in water applied to crops. And it can also get into our food supply because it might leach from packaging.
All right. Let me get to an example here to get the audience here engaged in what we're talking about. Let's talk about nail polish. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. I'm looking at Jessica's nails. I'm not trying to freak her out here, but it looks like she's using nail polish. Good girl.
It's just worn off. I'm
okay.
That's not very up to
all
date.
right. I don't want to freak you out here, but we're going to talk about triphenyl phosphate. That's TPHP. It's a plasticizer duly used in nail polish, in plastic manufacturing, and is a flame retardant for foam in furniture. Now, this was detected in the urine of every woman using nail polish. So, yeah, Jessica gave me a look there. So what happens is there was a study that found when women applied nail polish with TPHP directly to their nails, the levels of a biomarker of that chemical in their urine increased sharply. Technically, the researchers tested the women's urine for a chemical called diphenyl phosphate, or DPHP, which is created when the body metabolizes TPHP. Now, this was published October 19, 2015 in Environmental International. The study involved the testing of 10 nail polishes, with scientists finding traces of TPHP in 8 of them. 2 of the 8 polishes containing TPHP did not even have the ingredients listed on their labels. In animal studies, it has caused reproductive and developmental irregularities. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, repeated exposure to TPHP may cause minor changes in blood enzymes Animal studies found that overexposure caused muscle weakness and paralysis. So what TPHP is added to nail polish to give it more flexibility and durability. Clear polishes contain usually more than colored polishes. But when they found out that the people wore the fake nails, the TPHP did not change appreciably in their urine level. However, when they applied it directly to the nails, the levels of the DPHP in their urine increased sharply. So the thing is, while nails aren't permeable, scientists speculate that solvents such as nail polish remover allow toxic ingredients to be absorbed into the body more readily. So I was going to say, why don't you give us a list of some of the brands of nail polishes that contain TPHP? And if you have a question, it's 878-5104.
Okay, we got Sally Hansen, SCOPI, Butter London, Revlon, Milani, Wet n Wild, Spa Ritual, Orly, The Balm, Nuance by Selma Hayek, Maybelline, and Beauty Without Cruelty.
Right. And you would say, geez, I might have used some of those.
That's what I was going over in my head.
Yeah, and they contain, so what I was going to say is if you take some styrofoam and you put TPHP, the nail polish, in the styrofoam cup, watch what happens. And you'll be
horrified. I bet it eats through.
Well, Nellie, what do you think?
Well, you have to realize that nail polish is basically a paint.
Yeah.
So you rely on it, the actual color and the coating, to be dissolved in the solvent. And so then, as you apply it, the solvents evaporate and leave the coating behind. And so in essence, the solvents could easily, ferry materials across into the nail bed and on into the tissue. And that's not surprising. I mean, solvents ferry things across tissue all the time. So some years ago, I was consulted on a court case in which a law firm was trying to get manufacturers to take the solvent toluene out of their nail polish because toluene has been shown to produce birth defects. And yes, it's produced birth defects in people who have sniffed toluene to get high, but the question is, if you have a material that contained even low amounts of toluene, you still have a requirement that the product be labeled in the state of California under their Proposition 65. And so this law firm was trying to get manufacturers to take the solvent out. So when you look at, the issue of nail products, there are certainly a number of formulations out there that have somewhat safer solvents that do not contain free formaldehyde. Which are lower in plasticizers. The problem is that, of course, like anything, when products are marketed, the manufacturer likes to market them as being, long-lasting and flexible and won't chip or break. But if you want it to be long-lasting and not chip or break, you're going to be buying plasticizers. And that's the trade-off. So yes, the safer nail polishes, relatively speaking, are out there, but they don't last quite as long, and they will chip or break a little bit more easily, usually, because it's a tougher problem to solve in keeping things flexible like that.
All right. What I'm saying is that some of these nail polishes do have 30 chemicals combined. And the harsh chemicals, besides being bad for the environment, they're also bad for you because they cause the nails to become brittle and have harsh fumes. No polish is completely natural, but the most important thing to look for, I guess, they call them the brands that are 3-free, meaning they don't use toluene, butyl, phthalate, I guess is the right name, and formaldehyde, which are known carcinogens. So you have known carcinogens you're putting on your nails. Is that correct?
Well, there were regulations put out quite a long time ago that forbid the presence of free formaldehyde. But if you're using a resin that's based on formaldehyde, you could get some formaldehyde released from the material as it's being used. But these are all carcinogens. And keep in mind, formaldehyde is also quite aggressive as a sensitizer, causing allergic reactions, and it's a carcinogen by inhalation. Its problem is really anywhere through the respiratory tract, from the sinonasal area all the way down deep in the lung. So since it's very volatile, then it's in the air when you use the product. So yes, absolutely. Anything you can do to reduce your exposure to the volatiles or the materials that are skin absorbed is going to be highly valuable. So my first question always is, do you really want nail polish? Do you really need it? And if you do, then we have some relative risks that we can reduce by looking at the formulations.
All right. I have to take a break, but when we come back, this is a teaser. When we come back, we will tell you 7 non-toxic nail polish brands. So you have to stay through these announcements to hear the 7 non-toxic nail polish brands when we come back on 91.3 WBNY Buffalo.
Getting a tattoo is a big decision. It's not something to trust just any tattoo shop with. Rise Above has a new and improved shop to go along with their clean and friendly atmosphere. No matter what you choose to put on your skin, their award-winning artists can get the job done. Rise Above Classic Tattooing is located at 2289 Delaware Avenue. Open Monday through Saturday, 12 to 8 p.m. For more information, give them a call at 874-1675. And remember, walk-ins are always welcome.
Are you a K-12 school teacher seeking permanent certification? Are you an instructor seeking new methods and tools to engage your students? Are you interested in learning about the latest technologies and media for teaching and learning? If you are, then consider the Educational Technology Master's Program at SUNY Buffalo State. You can learn about the latest methods and tools for teaching and learning, including classroom technologies, instructional and visual design, text and graphic design, video production, television production, web design, audio editing, animation, distance learning, research methods, and much more. Our master's program is 33 credits or 11 courses in length, and we offer classes during the evenings and on the weekends. For more information, call 878-4923 or visit us at www.buffalostate.edu. The future is yours at SUNY Buffalo State.
Hey local businesses! Did you know that underwriting could get you noticed and recognized from people all throughout the Buffalo area for only a fraction of the cost of what you would pay for commercial radio airtime? 91.3 FM WBNY has been an integral part of the Buffalo community since 1982. Did you know that we're a non-for-profit student-run organization? For us to maintain our daily operations, WBNY counts on the student activity fee here at Buffalo State, as well as contributions from you, the local businesses. For more information, contact the WBNY underwriter at 716-878-3080 or WBNYUWD@gmail.com.
Little ham and eggs coming at you. Hold on, people. Hope you got your griddles.
91.3 FM WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative. Brought to you by the student activity fee here at Buffalo State College.
Making music, that's what that is.
This is All Talk Monday, WBNY's public affairs programming that airs Monday mornings till midnight. The views expressed in all the various All Talk Monday shows are not necessarily those of WBNY, the United Students Government at Buffalo State, or Buffalo State itself. Due to the opinionated nature of these programs, listener discretion is highly advised. If you have any questions or comments about All Talk Monday, you can direct them to WBNY's All Talk Monday, 1300 Elmwood Avenue, Buffalo, New York, 14222. For more information, check out our website at wbny.buffalostate.edu, or you may give us a call at the station at 716-878-5104.
Hey, Aqualung!
And take part in all the various All Talk Monday shows.
All right, and we're back here on Vantage Point. Jack Kanak and Jessica Kosick in Studio A. In Studio B, we have Nellie Brown and John Cunningham. we'll welcome everybody back to the show. 878-5104. We'll get you on. Area code 878-5104. Don't forget the WBNY 33 and a third. And that's going to be happening at Mohawk Place on Friday, February 19th at 8 p.m. So we're going to have Dream Spectrum, the Sleepy Ha-Has. We're going to have Soul Butcher and one of my favorite band names of all time, Intergalactic Burnt Toast. That's an actual band name, Intergalactic Burnt Toast. So anyhow, Jessica, go ahead and tell us about these nail polishes and what they cost. Obviously, there's got to be a price for not putting cancer-causing solvents on your hands.
Isn't that sad? It's sad. Okay, so the 7 non-toxic nail polish brands that we have, I've never heard of any of them, and I also looked up all the prices. So in order from least to most, we have Zoya, Suncoat, Piggy Paint, Honeybee Gardens, RGB, Shi Shui, and LVX, and then those range anywhere from $5 to $16 per bottle.
What's the normal range? I don't buy nail polish.
Well, I mean, I guess I would consider myself pretty cheap when you compare it to these. Like, I'll go into Dollar Tree and I'll buy $1 for a bottle.
$1 for solvents. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, see, Nellie's shaking her head back there. Yeah, but the question is, for the extra couple bucks, isn't it worth not having?
I would pay an extra couple dollars to not get cancer.
Yeah, I think that's what the lesson here is. Go ahead, Nellie. You gotta.
Well, my thought always, my first book was on health hazard and cosmetology, and it was based on a graduate paper I did here at Buff State so many years ago. But I took a look, first of all, do you want to use nail polish? Do you feel you need it? And then if you do, how you might then pick and choose among the product's formulations. Because it goes also beyond that, because sometimes, people have allergic reactions to certain dyes, and they need to know if that's their problem. They have to go looking for those too. So they may go beyond just looking at these manufacturers, but also looking at what colors they might consider within those manufacturers. So it's an interesting list. I didn't research that. That was your research, but I always just look at the ingredients. I'm not particular necessarily about who makes it, provided I can see what's in it.
I've never even looked once at ingredients on nail polish. I didn't even consider it.
Well, that's what this whole show is about. Yeah. That people are doing this to themselves and they don't realize it.
Definitely.
And that's part of the dilemma here and part of the problem. Yeah, John.
Yes, people are doing it to themselves by not reading the labels and everything else. But we're also finding out that, take for instance, the fracking industry now has a way of getting rid of their fracking waste water out in California, some of the most hazardous wastewater in the world. And what they're doing is they're selling it to farmers. They're putting it in ponds on their farms, and then they're pumping it out into irrigation for our food. So we're now getting fracking wastewater that is being uptaken by our food. People think they're eating healthy spinach and lettuce and fruits and vegetables and stuff, and here they are, they're eating chemicals that are in fracking waste, and it's a lot more than just what is in nail polish. And Dr. Brown here and I were just discussing that a few minutes ago, and she has quite an interesting view.
Well, John was introduced as having his experience in a treatment plant. Well, I was a chemist in a wastewater treatment plant for 5.5 years, and one of the things that I looked at was whether we would accept certain types of waste into the plant. So in recent years, as I read about things like fracking, that's my hat that I put back on and think to myself, oh, would I take this at my treatment plant? Because it's not just what people put into the material before they pump the water in the ground to push out the gas, but it's also what then comes out dissolved in the water from the rock, and some of which, of course, are radioactive material. So I sort of think to myself, how do we handle then these wastes that come up with natural radiation from our bedrock and things like that? So it's an interesting little sidebar conversation that I was having with Don during the break.
Yes, and also your experience with the wastewater treatment plant, they're now taking 85% of sewer sludge and using it as biosolids to put in biodigester facilities that they're then spreading into our farms for carbon sequestration, but also these chemicals and everything that are in the wastewater treatment plant sludge is going into the farm throughout the United States. So we're poisoning ourselves also that way, just to get rid of the sewer sludge. And they don't seem to care except for 9 heavy metals, and they admit that the heavy metals are in there, and they can break down in a woman's stomach during pregnancy and affect a embryo very, very easily.
I was just going to say we had a phone call. They didn't want to be on, but they're listening. And especially with the nail polish, they said there's this brand at Feel Right called Gabriel, and it's $8 a bottle.
It's actually one of the 5 free ones.
The 5 free ones. Okay,
Yes,
so
I just looked it up.
The 5 free, and do you know what those are? Let me go and tell you what they are. Okay, the
the
5 free ones, and for the rest of them, when I'm talking about the 5 free ones, if you want to write down the other ones we've talked about, Jessica's gonna speak a little slower here. So the 5 free, they don't use beside the toluene dibutyl phthalate and the formaldehyde. They also don't use resin or camphor in them, so they're called 5 free.
Okay.
Oh.
And now, actually, for all those listeners out there, we have 8 non-toxic nail polish brands.
Right.
The first one is Zoya.
Zoya.
Yes. The second one is Sun Coat. The
Okay.
third one is Piggy Paint, like the farm animal.
Piggy Paint.
Fourth is Honeybee Gardens. The fifth is RGB.
Sounds Russian. RGB.
I'm thinking like the primary colors.
You know what? You're probably right. RGB.
The sixth one is Shishwai.
All right, we got to spell that one. That's weird.
SHESWAI. And then the seventh one is LVX.
LVX.
Yes. Just the letters. We're not saying a word.
LVX. So Larry Victor.
Larry Victor
Xavier. Yeah, something like that.
And then the new 8th one we can add to this list is Gabriel, and they are also a 5 free. And the caller said that we can get them at Feel Right.
Feel Right for $8. Okay. So we want to thank that caller.
Thank you
very much. And if you want to call in 878-5104, I was going to talk about some more endocrine disruptors that you might not even think of. Phthalates, and they're in cosmetics. I guess that's makeup. People are putting plastic makeup on their faces. Is that right?
Yeah, and cosmetics, but also skin products, creams. So you might see it in something like a cream foundation to give something a texture.
So how would we know? I guess. How would we know if we're putting this junk on our face?
Well, there are a number of different phthalates, but you would see the word phthalate in the ingredients. Generally speaking, it might be, say, a butyl phthalate, but it might be others. There's a whole bunch of different phthalates. But these are often texturizers and not just plasticizers, but texturizers. So, for example, if you look at some skin creams and things that have a creamy texture, sometimes that creamy texture is because there's a phthalate plasticizer added to the formulation to give it that type of viscosity and sort of soft feel to it. Sometimes it's there as a more as a plasticizer for setting up the product. Like you may very well think that you wash yourself in the bath or shower with a soap bar, but if it doesn't say soap on it, it's probably a detergent bar, and we can't really make detergent solid the way you can soap unless you add some variation of a plasticizer to it. And of course, when we use these items, they tend to wash off, whether you're washing off your makeup later at the end of the day, or you're using something like a detergent bar in the shower. These things go down the drain, and some of them simply are not able to be broken down or removed in a treatment plant process, which means they go out into the water supply. And what is one plant's effluent is downstream somebody's drinking water intake. And so once we use these items, they end up in the environment, and we take them in other ways. And so that's why I think it's so important for people to understand that by using their choices as consumers and the power of the purse, they not only select products that might be free of a plasticizer, but we end up with less going down the drain and less ending up in the environment and eventually into our drinking water supply and into our food chain.
Can you give us some examples? Do you know some examples of like, I'm wondering what I should stay away from, like with a bar of soap?
Oh, well, I tend to encourage people simply to buy soap. And
It would say soap on there?
Yes, I would say buy soap bars. Or if you buy liquid soap in a pump, because you can get soap with other than potassium or sodium ions that you can get as a liquid. And simply look at the ingredients and don't buy anything with a plasticizer in it. And then the other thing you might consider is looking at locally made soaps. They're not only nice because people are not likely to have added a plasticizer to it, but also because unlike a lot of commercial manufacturers, a local artisan soap will have still in it the glycerin left over from the source of fat that they used. And as a result, you won't see them as drying to the skin. I know a lot of times people think, oh, I can't use soap on my skin because it's drying. But if you use something that's locally made, it'll still have the glycerin in it. Often manufacturers will remove the glycerin from their soap and then put it into other products as moisturizing agents. So when you dried yourself out with one product, you're applying a cream to restore it. Whereas I think if you buy, locally made products, you're more likely to see the glycerin still in the product. But that's my personal choice is always to buy locally made soap if I can do it.
And it helps the local economy.
Absolutely.
You want to know something interesting?
What?
When you smell the new car, you're smelling phthalates.
Really? Oh, Nellie shook her head yes. Is that's the foam, right? In the seats?
Well, it's in the plastics. If you want to keep anything in the car able to tolerate the extreme temperature changes that happen in a car, just think you don't want your dashboard and all the other parts to be cracking when it's the car gets really super hot in the summer or gets super, super cold in the wintertime. And that is what we have historically used plasticizers to do, is to enable products to tolerate when they need to be flexible in relation to bending and movement, as well as into very wide temperature extremes.
All right. And these phthalates, they've been linked to asthma? Is that true?
I've seen them linked to lots of different adverse health effects. I tend to think, so much of the time when we look at the phthalates, I've seen them in the way that their action is. The thing that I find distressing about them is that they are, in humans, what we call anti-androgens. In other words, they bind to cells that normally in the body would respond to male hormones like testosterone, and they prevent those cells from responding appropriately. So we have seen not only we think that a big problem with them is that baby boys are born with hypospadia, where the opening to the penis is not at the end, it's somewhere along the shaft of the penis, and they have to have surgical operations to correct that. We also think that phthalate plasticizers, based on our animal work, are probably associated a lot with a lot of different situations that we see in men today. The increased insulin resistance, increased diabetes. We think maybe with some of the increases in obesity that we're seeing in our population as well.
Okay, well, I looked up 7 ways to avoid these things, and it looks like a lot of it comes down to fragrance. If you see the word fragrance or perfume on a label, it almost always means phthalate. So stay away from the things that have fragrance. Crack the code. Plastic products with recycling codes 3 and 7 may contain phthalates or BPA. Look for plastic with recycling codes 1, 2, or 5. Take away all of the hand-me-down plastic toys. Avoid plastic whenever possible. Eat organic produce, meat, and dairy. Invest in a water filter, and use your dollars to make sense, like common sense, not sense like money.
I would add to that if you want to avoid, plastics of any kind leaching into your food, I would say also look at how you prepare the food. It's one thing to buy it so nicely and then go microwave it in plastic.
Yes.
So we have to also take a look at how we process things. Take a look at, in your microwave using glass or ceramic that is listed as microwave safe as well, and not just carry it, so far and not the rest of the way.
My mother actually refers to the microwave as the Nazi oven.
Oh, well, there are also phthalate plasticizers that are used as coating in cardboard boxes on the side facing the food. And so, when you look at buying, a lot of our pastas and rice and so forth, take a look. Are you seeing a sort of shiny-looking sort of plastic coating on the inside of the box? Then you may very well want to look at a different brand or, buy things in bulk and bring your own containers.
Are you talking about that like it looks like plastic wrap kind of film?
Yeah, well, it looks like on the inside of the box that it has a sort of a shiny surface as opposed to being what you would assume is plain paper.
Is that
plain cardboard.
paraben?
Those materials are in the phthalate family that are in the malleates, and they've been used to line packages for frozen fish and seafood. We've seen them lining packages for all kinds of pasta, rice, couscous, crackers, things like that.
So what would you do? Take it out of the box immediately? And
Well, I
put
certainly
it in...
would take it immediately out of the box. I wouldn't store it that way. But as you look at different brands and you find yourself buying some of these, it's time to look around at brands that have what appears to be plain cardboard, or buy your pasta in bulk and put it in your own bags. For example, when I go shopping, I bring cellulose bags so that later the bag is something I can throw in the composter.
Interesting. Okay, can you talk about, PBDE? That's the flame retardant used in plastics, polybromated diphenyl ether.
Wow, these items have been a tough problem simply because we've used them so much as flame retardants for a whole bunch of our different electronics. They've been used as flame retardants in our upholstered furniture, our carpet padding, and what we find is that they accumulate as wear materials, and they show up in our house dust. And if you just look at who eats house dust, look at the fact, for example, that house cats lick themselves, and they eat a lot of house dust, and we see a lot of increase in hyperthyroidism in them, so they've been a useful indicator organism for that. But at the same time, think about, children. When as babies, they crawl around the home, and they put their fingers in their mouth, and they mouth toys, and they eat a lot of house dust. So it's been a very tough item to avoid. We have seen some movements already in the European Union to remove them. We're starting to see some movements here in the U.S., but the difficulty is replacing them. which is always, of course, the argument the manufacturer gives, but it is a realistic one, is how do we replace these items to avoid the problem with fire? And it's not an easy one to address, but it's a real one. Sometimes the best thing we can do is, wipe down our house dust, vacuum with a HEPA vac. Anything you can do to reduce exposure is helpful, but we'd love to do it at the source, remove the items. And this one's been a tricky one.
Okay. All right, let's get to another one, and we're going to have to take a break here. Let's see. How about Agent Orange, one of John's favorite topics there?
Well, Agent Orange, in regards to coming from Vietnam and also affecting the returning vets from that war and causing cancers and everything. But I wanted to just touch here on a little bit of a subject that Dr. Brown has talked about here, and that it being in our water and our food, that there it gets into the wastewater treatment plant. It's bad stuff, all kinds of different chemicals, and they pull that out, and it's not treated. This is the stuff that they pull out and before the treatment of the effluent of the plant. And these sewer sludges are being used in digesters, as I said before, and then being put into and used as fertilizer on our foods. And all of these very, very hazardous chemicals are not just endocrine disruptors for embryos and fetuses. These are also endocrine disruptors for children and adults and all through our lives. And it can affect, from my studies, and I want to verify with Dr. Brown here, that these things, the endocrine disruptors, can cause problems several years down the road, such as she was talking about thyroid problems or diabetes and stuff. And it might be due to the fact that you've intaken endocrine disruptors 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago, and now you're seeing the results of it. Is this also, am I correct in that, Doctor?
Well, the issue is that, to me, endocrine disruptors can act at really any age in a person. We've discovered that sensitive levels, particularly for the fetus and during puberty, but for some of these materials, the effects can be at any age, which is why I think we need to be very particular about trying to get these materials out at the source, as well as how we select things in our own personal lives in terms of our food, our personal care products, and so on. A lot of these items are so very ubiquitous. I mean, you think about lead is an endocrine disruptor, but it's a toxin and has adverse effects for every single pretty much body system there is, and its effects, of course, can be at any age, although they're horrifically devastating to the fetus.
And, of course, the amount of lead in the person's body should be 0.
Basically, lead is always a contaminant in the human body whenever it's found. It has no redeeming value at all. It's not a micronutrient or used for anything. It's always a contaminant.
Well, all right. I'm going to have to take a break. And we're on 91.3 WBNY Buffalo. Buffalo's original alternative since 1982, brought to you by the Buffalo State College Student Activity Fee. So I just want to mention real quick, WBNY 33 and a third. We've been on since 1982, 33 and a third years. So come to Mohawk Place on Friday, February 19th at 8 p.m. For more information, WBNYalumni.com. WBNYalumni.com. There we go. It's on my shirt. All right. So now we're going to go and we're going to hear a little disclaimer for All Talk Monday. and then we'll be back with local news followed by ABC News.
Little ham and eggs coming at you. Hold on, people. Hope you got your griddles.
91.3 FM WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative. Brought to you by the student activity fee here at Buffalo State College.
Making music, that's what that is.
This is All Talk Monday, WBNY's public affairs programming that airs Monday mornings till midnight. The views expressed in all the various All Talk Monday shows are not necessarily those of WBNY, the United Students Government at Buffalo State, or Buffalo State itself. Due to the opinionated nature of these programs, listener discretion is highly advised. If you have any questions or comments about All Talk Monday, you can direct them to WBNY's All Talk Monday, 1300 Elmwood Avenue, Buffalo, New York, 14222. For more information, check out our website at wbny.buffalostate.edu. Or you may give us a call at the station at 716-878-5104.
Hey, Aqualung!
And take part in all the various All Talk Monday shows.
You're listening to 91.3 FM WBNY. We are Buffalo's original alternative since 1982. Brought to you by the Buffalo State College Student Activity Fee. This is Dominic Taverna, and I'm in the WBNY newsroom. Here's what's happening. After years of deals falling through, big plans for the 50-acre land that never came to fruition, Empire State Development has approved a $3.5 million Monday transferring waterfront property from the NFTA to the Erie Canal Harbor Development Committee. The deal is for Terminals A and B. Congressman Brian Higgins says last month the NFTA Board of Directors authorized the transfer of the property. The land had been owned by NFTA for nearly 60 years. This is the final piece of the outer harbor to be handed over. The NFTA transferred other parcels in the past few years. The Buffalo Bills in the news, but not for something good. Buffalo Bills running back LaShawn McCoy and former NFL back Curtis Brinkley are among 4 persons being investigated as their part in the early Sunday morning altercation that resulted in 2 off-duty police officers being hospitalized, according to multiple media reports. None of the 4 have been charged. A police report states that incident took place at 2:45 a.m. Sunday at the Recess Lounge in Philadelphia and stemmed from a dispute over a bottle of champagne. Your favorite restaurant, if you love Mexican grill, Chipotle, will close its restaurants for lunch today. The chain will usually open at 11 a.m., will not open until 3 p.m. today in order to discuss new food safety procedures with staff. The new food preparation and handling protocols include a different process for marinating chicken and steak, marinating certain ingredients in citrus or bleaching them to kill microbes, and focus on safely cleaning and cutting fresh produce. This is Dominic Taverna in the WBNY newsroom. Current time right now is 2:04. We're going to send it right now to ABC News for a national news update.
ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. First responders are on scene of a bus accident on I-95 North in Connecticut near the town of Madison. ABC's Brian Hartman is there right across from the crash site where he says the roads are extremely icy.
It looks like this thing was driving up the street, spun out, went off the road. The guardrail alongside this bus is a twisted mess right now. For the last half hour or so, we've seen several passengers taken out from what looks like the windshield of this bus and put onto stretchers and then led down to one of the several ambulances that are on the scene here.
Meanwhile, there are blizzard warnings in effect for southeastern Massachusetts. It's the final hours of getting out the vote in New Hampshire before tomorrow's primary. Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders is choosing not to respond to recent Clinton campaign accusations that his backers are waging profane and sexist attacks on the former Secretary of State. Sanders maintains a sizable lead in the Granite State. This is ABC News. Denver Broncos linebacker Von Miller has been named Super Bowl 50 MVP for leading the dominant defense that shut down the Carolina Panthers and their quarterback Cam Newton last night. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell spoke at a conference in San Francisco today.
Vaughn is the, I believe, 10th MVP to come from the defensive side of the ball. And the kind of individual and the kind of individual performance that I think will be remembered by all.
The White House asking Congress to approve nearly $2 billion in emergency funding to battle the Zika virus here at home and in Latin America. Meanwhile, today, U.S. Olympic Committee reportedly told American athletes they can sit out the Rio 2016 Olympic Games this August if they're concerned about their health. The Royal Caribbean cruise ship that ran into 30-foot high waves and high winds in the Atlantic Sunday is turning around and sailing back to its home port in New Jersey. That ship was headed to Florida. Passengers and items tossed around in the rough seas. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Now we're back with the weather. I was going to say, regarding the weather, it's going to get a little bit colder, progressively colder throughout the whole week. And today we're going to have, it's right now 51 degrees, believe it or not.
Didn't feel it.
It's the wind. But I had the weather all queued up here, and it got knocked off. So anyhow, it's going to be 51 degrees. It's right now, and it's going to be about 37, 38 tomorrow. Chance of rain and snow, and it's going to be all snow the rest of the week, turning into the 20s on Wednesday. And Thursday's going to be cold in the teens. It's going to be up again into the 20s. We're talking a little bit of snow every day, not a lot, but a little bit, into the 20s on Friday. And then the weekend, Saturday, is going to be like bone-chilling cold. They're calling for like 4 degrees, and I think it might be too warm.
Oh.
I was looking at the maps before I came here, and it was minus 30 degrees Celsius at a mile. For the minus 30 Celsius is like really like 22 below at a mile up.
We just had Groundhog's Day, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, it's the old adage, as the daylight grows longer, the cold grows stronger.
Oh.
It's the old adage. So it's going to be really numbing cold on Saturday. But then warming up later toward the weekend, and next week we're back up into the 20s and 30s. So,
did the groundhog see its shadow?
I think no, he did not. The official Punxsutawney Phil did not. So that means 4 weeks of winter. However, the Dunkirk Dave did, which is 6 weeks.
So we're looking at 4 to 6 more weeks of winter. Winter in quotes.
And the groundhog, I think the groundhog in Quebec, Fred, he died. He died just before making the prediction.
So people actually, can you explain to me Groundhog's Day? Like, is there a groundhog? They put him out and see.
Yeah. Last year the groundhog bit the guy. He held the groundhog up and he bit the guy, and he almost lost a finger.
Well, maybe you should leave these animals alone.
Well, they're wild animals, but supposedly, if the groundhog sees its shadow, 6 weeks. But the way the folklore goes, if it's very cold and dry, then you're in a cold air mass, and chances are you'll have 6 more weeks of winter. But if the groundhog doesn't see his shadows because it's warmer and it's cloudy and humid, which means only 4 weeks of winter because you have less.
So this is literal. Like, there is an actual groundhog and there is an actual
There's
shadow.
There's in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, there's an actual groundhog, and there's like 8 of them throughout the whole country. There's Dunkirk Dave and one in Georgia and one in Quebec. I think the guy in Quebec died, but one groundhog died. I think the guy in Quebec died, the groundhog. But see, if I was doing it, I'd have 2 groundhogs. So if one died, the other one would still be, Junior would be up and coming,
You should keep the bloodline going.
Right. But see, they don't think that, they don't think that way. But anyhow, what I was going to mention is the WBNY. So currently 51 still in Buffalo. I'll get you an updated forecast at 2:30 or 2:20, something like that. But anyhow, I was going to mention the WBNY 33 and the 3rd anniversary, Friday, February 19th, 8 p.m. at Mohawk Place. The bands, the Sleepy Ha-Ha's, Dream Spectrum, Soul Butcher, and Intergalactic Burnt Toast. One of the favorites here. And I was just going to play like 15 seconds of Dream Spectrum, so people will say, well, what is Dream Spectrum? They're a local band, and here's a little bit of music from him, and then we'll get back. See, it's not bad, right?
You didn't even listen to them sing.
No, it's all instrumental.
Oh.
The whole album is instrumental.
I did not know that.
Dream Spectrum, the whole album, instrumental. All instruments. I don't know if there's a harp in there, but it's all instruments. Okay. Well, enough of this. We're going to get back to endocrine disruptors. 878-5104 is the number. If you're listening to on the web at wbny.buffalostate.edu, it's area code 716-878-5104. Jack Kanak, Jessica Kosick in Studio A and Studio B, Nellie Brown and John Cunningham. And let me talk about how about one interesting thing. I got a couple questions. Bisphenol A, which is used in polycarbonate plastic liner in the food cans you're talking about. What about the cash register receipts that people are actually, I guess, that work all day long and take these receipts, and how does that get to them?
Well, unfortunately, it can be skin absorbed. So if you look at, in essence, urine, for example, and people who handle these receipts all the time, you do find that they have had some pretty significant and regular exposure. The problem has been replacing that, and a number of manufacturers have been very successful in coming up with an alternative canned food liners. I always like to suggest for people, if you don't want to use a receipt, get it electronically now, have it sent to your email if you need that. But I'd like to see people, in essence, look at alternative methods for the cash register tape. These are the ones that are
printed by laser?
Heat printed. Heat printed. Those are the ones that have the bisphenol A in them.
And they're linked to breast cancer?
Well, interestingly enough, the issue with endocrine disruptors generally has suggested that there may very well be either carcinogens or endocrine disruptor exposures that might have happened to a girl in utero, or that might happen to her during breast bud development at puberty that might set her up for cancer later in life. So it's a whole area in which there is an interesting theoretical link to breast cancer that's in some ways looking kind of strong. So I think that this is one way that we can try to reduce exposures to potential carcinogens.
Okay. And I had to ask this question for Mother before I forget. She likes to cook with the Teflon. Oh. The Teflon pans, and talk about the danger with those surfaces. Boy, it's great cleanup or whatever, but what's it doing to your body?
Yeah, I tend to suggest that people consider other types of metal finishes and use small amounts of a fat to reduce sticking. And if there's an issue, soak the pan later. I mean, the idea of trying to get things to slip off easily. Now, there are high-temperature ceramic coatings, which you can get, which won't have these plastics and so forth in them. But I tend to suggest people not look at these plastic coatings. There are other reasons for them. If they get overheated, their thermal decomposition products are very poisonous. If you have a fire on your stove with one of them, they're a danger not just to you, but also to firefighters, unless they're wearing full turnout gear. And of course, in the manufacturing process, people are exposed to the monomers and so forth in the manufacturing process, and of course, they have environmental effects at the manufacturing point as well. So I'm thinking, do we really need these? Can we work without them? And I think there are other cooking methods that we could use and other ways of handling our pots and pans that we don't need to have these things.
All right. There's this new one that I saw advertised. It's called Copper Red. It supposedly combines copper with ceramic. Mm-hmm. And these people are, they're using egg beaters on the metal. It doesn't scratch or whatever, and everything slides off. And it's good to 500 degrees. Do you know anything about that?
Well, the ceramic coatings that I have seen touted look like a nice alternative. Like anything else, we kind of have to see what the information on them is as to how they hold up. I always think it's interesting to look at what happens to your old pots and pans. And if you see coatings gone, where did those go? You either ate them or they went down the drain. And so with something that's really durable and very highly resistant, you're doing your best prevention.
Okay.
With Teflon, is it still not healthy if you use plastic and don't actually break the pan?
Well, I still have concerns about that, because even with plastic or wood utensils, you still see over time these finishes gradually chipping, and they're not perfect. They do break down over time. So I think that it's still a good idea to look at alternatives.
All right, I've got some more here. Let's talk about cleaning compounds, the quaternary ammonium compounds, the common disinfectants that affect pregnancy and the developing fetus.
Well, the quaternary ammonium disinfectants, or quats, have a fairly long history of being sold both over the counter for bathroom disinfection, as well as being used institutionally in hospitals, healthcare, building use, in restrooms. Very, very wide use of them. Pretty much when they're sold for that purpose, they're sold as chloride salts. They are also manufactured as sulfate salts and are often a common formulation for fabric softener as well. So for these, the information on them as an endocrine disruptor is actually fairly recent, and I have just seen the beginnings of information come out on them. These are going to be an interesting one for alternatives. Certainly there are some nice disinfectants based on the peroxide, which could be used at home or as replacements, but some of the other ones, disinfectant formulations that we have out there where we need a higher level of kill for influenza viruses, for example, or for more resistant viruses, or for some of the bacteria that form spores, and for fungal kills. These are much tougher. And I think we're probably going to see the quats around for a while longer, as we maybe try to find some other alternatives for them. There are some natural source quats, believe it or not, such as some of the grapefruit seed extracts. These are natural source quats that exist in nature. But there are other types of natural disinfectants like tea tree oil and some others. But when we get into institutional disinfectants for healthcare, that's going to be tougher to do the kind of kill that we need. So I like to get people thinking at home that you might take a look at some of the natural tea tree oils and the peroxide disinfectants, as well as looking at how you do cleaning generally. Generally, things need to be simply cleaned. I think we go a little nuts thinking we have to disinfect everything. A lot of it is our work practices in the kitchen and how we handle our meats. But I would say if you're concerned about the quats, I would avoid them during pregnancy. And then, for institutional use, these are going to be a little tougher to substitute for.
All right. All right, let me get to another one here. People put that black hair dye, and they think they're using the Just for Men to look good, and they're putting lead on their head. Is that correct?
Not just on their head, but they're putting organic lead compounds often on the face for dyeing the beard.
Oh, goodness.
And the absorption rate through the skin along the chin is many times higher than what it is on the scalp, which is already a very, very high absorption rate. I like to get people thinking about alternatives for that. For example, I do color my hair, but I use vegetable dyes. You can get coloring agents based upon things like walnut shell extract and other natural source materials. Of course, not everything that comes from nature, nature has some poisons in it too. But you can get natural source colors as well. So it is possible to look at some natural source materials for some of these alternatives. But the organic lead compounds used in hair color are a serious problem. So also are similar colors based on cadmium or on not so much cadmium, but on other metals.
Nickel.
Bismuth, for example, has been a common metal used in hair color. But the metals like lead and cadmium and nickel and others seem to act as what are called metallic estrogens. And their estrogen-like behavior, of course, is a real problem for super feminizing women or for feminization of males, and certainly an issue also for during fetal development. It sounds like super feminization might not be so bad, but the reality is that it's an abnormal development of the ovaries, and it interferes with fertility. So it's a problem in both males and females.
Wow.
I'm aware that cadmium that is allowed in the biodigesters for putting on our food breaks down at 3.5 to 4.5 pH in a person's stomach. Well, our stomach is pH of 2.5, which breaks the cadmium down into nanoparticles and nanotubes. And these nanoparticles and nanotubes can go directly right through the placenta and right to the softest tissue in the body, which is the developing brain of a baby. So you got to be very, very careful when you are using products that have some of these things in them, such as lead and cadmium and et cetera, because it breaks them down so small, it's below the molecular level, and it just over a period of time can cause a buildup effect in the baby's brain and cause various problems, many different problems.
Well, cadmium is also a nasty kidney toxin. The kidneys bioaccumulate it, and it's pretty severe, just as a direct poison. The nickel is a carcinogen, so it's already a problem. Of course, some lead compounds are also carcinogens, and unfortunately, the lead acetate, most commonly used in hair dye, has been a listed carcinogen also.
All right. I just have one more to ask you, and that is the triclosan, the antimicrobacterial in the soap, the toothpaste, the cosmetics, linked to thyroid effects.
Yeah, this one is an interesting, and more recently has become even a little bit goofier, because some recent research on the actual antibacterial effects of triclosan have suggested that it really doesn't have good antimicrobial effects at all. So in essence, it's been used in the past on the idea that if we clean our hands, we're killing the bacteria on the skin, and it's also been used for both a preservative and to kill bacteria applied when it's used in toothpaste as well on the mouth. But in essence, while it's been linked to thyroid effects, the idea that some of this recent research is indicating its antibacterial effects are actually not very good anyway, and so it may have been one of those products that's just totally useless, and if anything, once you put it in the product, is not very valuable. The reality is that we need to simply improve our hand washing behavior. And I try to get people to think about that all the time, that when you wash your hands and you go to dry them, make sure that as you've washed your hands and you've washed them and scrubbed them long enough that you could actually hum to yourself a couple of refrains of say, happy birthday or twinkle, twinkle, little star, you've cleaned the skin very well already. And so then what you want to do is leave the water running, go get the paper towel and dry your hands, and then use the paper towel to turn off the faucet. So if you've turned on a manual faucet, you touched it with your dirty hands. So you don't want to then touch it with your clean hands. Use the paper towel for that purpose.
All right. Okay, we're running up against the clock. Is there any last word from both John and Nellie? Go ahead, Nellie, first.
I think a lot of times we just need to be better consumers, looking very much at what we want to put in our bodies or in our environment, and realize that, yes, we'll pay a little bit more money for that, but you're making it part of your body. Wouldn't you really want to spend the money that way? As opposed to just going for something that's the cheapest, because the power of the purse can steer manufacturers towards the more desirable formulations. And I think that's a very powerful thing. And just think about right now how many more places are now willing to grow things like organic crops because the consumers want them. We can influence a lot just by our spending habits, where we want to spend our money.
All right. How do people get in contact with you? That might have a question for you.
Well, they can certainly email me at Cornell University. They can find my name on the Cornell website, or they can email me directly at njb7@cornell.edu.
Okay. And John, any last word?
Yes, Nellie, I thank you very, very much for an education that I've gotten here today. Very interesting in some of the aspects of what you've been talking about. And also, I think that there needs to be further discussion on this. We need to get with Jack and everybody and go further and more in depth into this subject, because it has such an effect upon all the public, and we've just scratched the surface here of what endocrine disruption is all about, and the hormone imbalances, and then what diseases and problems that can then flourish in your body. It's unnecessary. It doesn't have to be that way that 10, 15 years down the road, grandpa has got kidney damage or liver damage or whatever, and we're at his funeral 6 months later because 10 years ago he came across a triglyceride or something of that nature. So I thank you again very much. And Jack and everybody, I would like to say thank you again for giving me some time on the radio here.
All right. Thanks a lot, John, for that last word. Jessica, any last word?
Stay clean, stay safe, and look up some of those nail polishes.
Read the labels. You got to read the labels, people. And stay away from some of the stuff we talked about the last hour and a half. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to Vantage Point. Next week's show will be environmental talk with Dr. Charlie Bowman and Dr. Linda Schneekloff from the Sierra Club Niagara Group. And we'll have some special 15-minute to 20-minute guests, which I have no clue what's going to be, but maybe Jessica does. Do you have any?
It's all a surprise.
Oh, well. Do you know what time it's going on?
We'll do it at the top of the hour.
All right. And for Nellie Brown, John Cunningham, and Jessica Cossack, I'm Jack Kanak, 91.3 WBNY, Buffalo.